Here we go, broadcasting, and I'm going to share. Cool.
There
So I
we
can see
go.
our attendees flowing in, which is wonderful. Hey, everybody, this is Jason Lindstrom from Bucket List Rewards, and I'll have with me here today Alex Wingert, who I'll be formally introducing in just a second. I can see a bunch of people rapidly joining the call, which is great. I see it's 12:02, so we're going to be kicking things off here in about 20 more seconds. And great. So Alex, you're able to see my screen well?
I can see it. 5 tactics to reward and recognize your staff.
With that, I mean, what better intro is that? That is exactly what we're going to be covering today. And I'm really excited to be sharing and interviewing Alex. What I'm going to encourage you guys to do today for the participants is to please feel free to ask questions as we go. We're going to be answering the questions at the end. We're not ignoring you. We're just going to answer them at the end in one big batch. But if you see something that you're interested in or want to do a deeper dive on, please feel free to jump in. Additionally, I'm going to share a copy of the slide deck. And lastly, I'm also recording this session, so we're going to be sharing a copy of that as well. So please feel free to share that with colleagues who might be interested. And so obviously, I'm Jason. I'm one of the managing partners at Bucket List Rewards. And this year, we're going to be doing a monthly webinar series to help educate people on best practices or on culture building. And today I'm super excited to have Alex Wingert with me. I've had a chance to know Alex for a number of years. He's an outstanding individual. He's a great CEO, and it's really cool. Alex's career trajectory. He joined Advisors websites in kind of a junior role, and just due to some great work and huge contributions, he rapidly moved through the ranks. And the most recent role, I believe, was Director of Culture and Product.
Yep.
And so I know culture is near and dear to him. He's also a dad. He's an amazing trail runner, which I think is kind of a newer sport for him. And
I think amazing is an overstatement for now, but I'll accept it.
Great, very good. And just a great leader at all as well. So welcome to the webinar today, bud.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Cool. So let's jump into the agenda. And really, this is meant to be like a QA type of format. Alex and I have had a chance to chat in advance and prepare some great materials. But the big questions we're going to be tackling today are: what are some tactics to reward and recognize your staff? We're going to start there. How do you build a high performance culture? And how to use employee engagement. In just a couple seconds, I'm going to start off that rewards and recognition question. Obviously, Advisor Websites is a user of the Bucket List Rewards platform, but I've intentionally tried not to show too many screenshots of the product. I'm a huge believer of recognition. Alex and the Advisor Websites team, they had a recognition program in place way before we came along, and they had great utilization. They integrated with Slack. It was outstanding. So I'm just a huge believer in recognition. So whether you go with us or somewhere else, it doesn't matter. But without further ado, let's jump into that first question.
All right.
So maybe you can start off with just describing your recognition program, Alex.
Yeah, so like you mentioned, Jason, we've been doing recognition for several years now, even before we started using Bucket List. And I think it really started when we revamped our core values, maybe like, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago. And they were a big improvement from our previous core values. I think the first time we went through the exercise, we made core values. We put them on our wall. We maybe weren't super proud of them, but then as the company evolved and we really started to realize who we were as a company, we actually revamped our core values. And when we did that, we wanted to roll out a peer recognition system to recognize employees for living core values. So the first thing I'll speak to right now is peer recognition. So if we go to the next slide here, this is an example of what we do on a weekly basis. So this is taken directly from our weekly huddle. That's like our company all hands meeting that we do on a weekly basis. And it's a summary of all the, I guess it's a summary of the top 10 core value leaders. And this is all done through peer recognition. So you can see we have Melissa on top there with 429 points. These are all points that her colleagues have given her for living advisor website's core values. And just some examples, we try and summarize on a weekly basis as well. So she's helping with HubSpot, she's doing some video editing, she's being a bright light, positive influence, and just generally having her coworkers back, which is actually one of our core values. So it's explicitly mentioned there. But it's been really, really good for us to do this on a weekly basis. And one of the reasons it's so important for us is because, as managers and leaders, we're not able to see everything that happens within the company. It's just impossible. And we're not even a big company, there's 40 of us. But with peer recognition, it gives us an opportunity to see all this good work that may have previously gone unnoticed. And now we celebrate it on a weekly basis. And everyone just gets really involved in it. It's been very, very positive since we started doing this.
So quick question on this.
Yeah.
You guys do this on a weekly basis, a part of your huddle. When it comes to this section, the core value leaderboard, who actually reads this off and speaks to this section?
Yeah, I do this every week. So this is one of my slides I do during the huddle because I think it's super important to come from me, both from a selfish perspective, but also from a communication perspective. I personally want to go through the work of putting this list together, going into bucket list to see how many points are there. Because this is the top 10, but it has all 40 people there. And we can see who's getting recognized and what they're getting recognized for. So I personally like going in and doing that. But I love communicating on a weekly basis as well. Being the CEO, I don't have a team like other departments, so it's cool for me to have the whole team as my team, and I can recognize them.
Yeah, it's something we've seen that's become an informal best practice is companies that tend to have very high engagement with their recognition program like you guys do. Mm-hmm. They often have leadership buy-in and support, and what you're doing, that's outstanding. I've seen it elsewhere where the CEOs will get up and call out recognition on a regular basis.
Yeah. So this is just the day-to-day stuff that we do for peer recognition, but something that's really cool, and it might seem small, but we celebrate employee anniversaries.
Awesome.
And we don't do it just by, giving them some random thing that doesn't really mean a lot. What we found really worked is after the first anniversary, so they've been with the company for 1 year, everyone has a cartoonized photo of themselves put on a mug. It's an advisor website's mug. And just a couple of weeks ago, we had someone go through this, and she was out of the office the day before, so it was perfect. I was able to put it on her desk, so when she came in the next day, she would see it. And her manager was actually oh, she can't wait to see what she looks like as a cartoon, because it's a small gesture, but it really helps the employee feel they've made it, or they're fully a part of this team now. And that's just an example of what we do after 1 year. We do a couple things every year, usually something different, but we want to do things that really, allow people to feel valued and feel connected with the group.
That's awesome. I love it, bud. Quick one micro comment or question. I know for some organizations we work with, they choose to turn the leaderboard off, but what do you guys like or dislike, or what sort of feedback have you guys heard about the leaderboard and kind of showing who gets the most points on a rolling 30-day basis, for example?
Yeah, I was actually, when we rolled it out, I was a little scared because it didn't seem like it's something that should be viewed competitively. When I think of a leaderboard, I'm this is a competition, but it didn't really turn out that way. And one of the reasons for that is when we rolled it out, we actually gave managers a mandate that they had to use up all of their core value recognition points on a weekly basis to just get in the practice of recognizing their team. So with a good example set from our managers, employees kind of saw what it was like to use the platform. And then since we were putting in an extra effort at the beginning to roll this out, we'd recognize individuals. Individuals will get recognized, they like it, and then they'll be more likely to recognize someone else. And that's kind of what kicked this all off. But the leaderboard, it might seem awkward at first, and it might not be for everyone. We might have been lucky in our rollout of it, But I was definitely a little hesitant before we did it. But I was like, hey, you know what? Like for that number one person, like they earned it. Like I do want to recognize them. And like once you do it a couple times, you get way more comfortable with it for sure.
Awesome. That's great. Cool. Well, shall we move on and talk about utilization and engagement? Yeah,
Let's do
great.
it. Yep.
So you guys have insanely good utilization.
Yeah, I was actually shocked when you showed me this. I had no
Yeah, it's
idea.
funny. We kind of keep a close tabs on usage, and what's interesting is you guys have been using this for 2.5, 3 years now. It's
Yeah.
like many years, like,
Yep.
and I've seen many months where it's 95%
Mhm.
or greater. As of December, 87% of staff are recognizing somebody or being recognized. So clearly, you guys have some really good engagement. And my
Mhm.
question for you is, how do you ensure the program gets used? How do you ensure there's good utilization?
Right. And I think this ties into when we rolled it out. Like I kind of mentioned, at the beginning we mandated our managers that they had to use up all their core value points, and that was just to adopt the tool. Like we wanted this culture of recognition. We know it's important. I'm sure everyone's heard of at least like the Gallup surveys and the Gallup polls and all that. It's like,
Yeah,
do I feel recognized for like the work that I do at work? We know it's important and it's something that needs to be done. So at the beginning, we did make it a rule for our managers. Like, it doesn't sound fun making something mandatory, but the good news is it's not mandatory anymore because the adoption's so good. But I think for the first, maybe I want to say the first quarter at least, so probably the first 4 months, like it was
cool.
mandatory that every manager had to use their 200 or 300 points on a weekly basis to recognize people on their team. And then it just really took off from there.
Awesome. And
Yeah.
so another interesting distinction, I heard you mention points, and I know you happen to use points on our
Yep.
platform. I also know that you guys use what we call non-monetary points, so that the points are being handed out, but they actually have no cash value.
Mhm.
Can you kind of speak to that and the success or effectiveness of that piece?
Yeah, so the reason we don't tie the cash to it is um, when we first started using the bucket list platform, I actually thought it was really powerful um, to give everyone like bucket list money on an annual basis for them to knock stuff off their bucket list, just because I think it's so important. We do give monetary points for some of the anniversaries. So if it's like your third anniversary, you get more bucket list dollars to spend on the platform. Um, but I think, and like Jason, you probably know more than I do. This is where I might have been scared of people gaming the system, like giving away points to make it monetary. Like I wasn't super comfortable doing that right away. So what we do is we do the non-monetary leaderboard, just to like recognize everyone like on a level playing field.
Cool.
But
Yeah.
then we have like different incentives that we do to monetize like the bucket list points on the platform.
Yeah. I mean, certainly what we've seen is what we've done is built our platform to enable companies to roll it out in a way that's comfortable for them. And every
Mhm.
every company's kind of unique and different. So some
Yeah,
companies like monetary points. Monetary points do typically result in higher engagement.
yeah.
But one reason I love advisor websites is you guys use points because they're kind of fun. Um,
Mhm.
but they actually have no cash value. And I don't know, it kind of makes it a way to create leaderboards. And additionally,
Mhm.
there's no direct cost for you guys as well. So,
Yeah,
uh,
exactly. And that might have actually been one of the deciding factors too, because we knew how much we wanted to spend on this program, and that's why we give everyone like a set amount per year, because we're like, this is what we're comfortable doing. So that might have been why we did it when we first rolled it out. Yeah.
cool. So that's kind of a quick overview of how Advisor Websites is doing recognition. Something I'm really excited, and thank you for sharing this, Alex, is we're going to talk a bit about culture and alignment. Before I speak to that, certainly all the best companies in the world, the Googles, the Patagonias, Facebooks, Advisor Websites, they have a recognition program to make people feel valued and appreciated. It's just what the best companies do. Additionally, there is a huge ROI to recognition. So for those of you who are not yet using a recognition program, whether formal or informal, employee recognition can decrease employer turnover by more than 30%. It increases employee productivity. And again, like the Disneys and Navy SEALs, the best companies are using it because this is how you create a high performance culture. It's one pillar in creating a high performance culture. But having said that, I I totally appreciate recognition is just one element of creating a good company, a good culture. Alex has been kind enough to share some of the other tools they're utilizing at Advisor websites. And I think there's going to be some really cool takeaways in these next sections. And I'll jump into that now. So my next question for Alex is, how do you build a high performance culture?
Well, first off, you have to make sure you dress up on Halloween, of course. That's a pretty good pick, actually. I like that. Okay, so how to build a high performance culture. Very big question, potentially. When I was thinking about how I wanted to talk about this, I thought the most logical way was to walk through the tools that we use. But at the core of this is setting expectations with employees on what performance is expected of them. And we do that in a fairly structured way. Obviously, open communication the whole time. But I'll walk you through some of the tools that we use to facilitate these conversations. So the first one I'll talk to is the scorecard. So I've blurred out some of the confidential information on here, but we use a color-coded system, green, yellow, red. Green obviously means you're doing it. Yellow is kind of the middle tier, and red is definitely not doing it. On a weekly basis, we track our KPIs across our entire company. So Jason's just highlighting over every week. So every Monday, the team fills this out. Down the left-hand side, we have our departments, and for each department, we have the KPIs that that department's responsible for, and next to the KPI, we show who is responsible for it. So we have like Andrea here, for instance, at the top. So she'd be the one filling out her KPIs on a weekly basis. And what's really important about this is it sets the expectations and it just makes it very clear. And it's also just cut and dry. So it's like, are you on track? Yes or no? And we have like the 3-tier system here. So this is one tool that the whole company uses, gets updated every single week to track the KPIs. And KPIs are it's like the day-to-day stuff. This next one here is Department Rocks. So Department rocks and individual rocks are projects that someone might be working on. It could be quarterly, semi-annually, annually. They're stuff that's not as easy to measure. Like an example could be like set up Facebook retargeting ad campaign and generate web autobooks. So like 2 weeks in, there's not a super clear metric we can use because we're just getting it set up. We're configuring a bunch of tools. But what we do is we track this, again, on a weekly basis. Every employee has rocks that they do. And the way that it's structured is that the individual's rocks are directly associated with the department rocks, which are up at the top here. And then the department rocks are directly associated with the company rocks. And we make a very conscious effort to communicate this of how the individual's rock ties up to the company performance. There's definitely the department in between, but we know that employees can do their best work when they can see the value of it across the whole company.
Yeah, that's super cool. It's what I just heard you say is you're creating alignment by connecting individual contributions to department contributions to the greater company.
Yeah, exactly. And like we never used to have this structured as well. Like sometimes employees would be working on something and they might never even see the end of it. Like it was just a project that they worked on. And it just kind of like fizzles off. And we definitely had that in the past, but we've adopted this model and it's worked quite well because we can directly see how an employee's rocks tie into the department's rocks, which tie into like the company vision.
Cool. And what is this? Is this reviewed like in a public format at the huddle, or how do you guys like actually review it on a weekly basis? What's the format?
Yeah, so same with the scorecard. Monday mornings, everyone fills it out individually. But then every Wednesday, we do our company huddle. We don't go through the whole thing because it would take way too long. But if there's something kind of new and noteworthy, the huddle would be the time that we share it with the company. So maybe if someone achieved their rock for the quarter, they would present that on Wednesday at the huddles. But it's not just like, here's a progress update. Like that's kind of boring to present to the whole company unless it's something super critical.
Great. So for
Yeah,
example, the setup Facebook retargeting ads, let's say that got completed second week of February. That's
exactly.
something, Andrew, you could shout out in the huddle in a public format, which almost even
Exactly.
ties to the recognition idea where you're recognizing great work and
Yeah,
closure.
exactly.
Nice. Awesome, sir.
And
Anything
then
else? Oh,
no, I was going to say, I'm going to go on to the next piece here because it kind of brings it all together. So we have our scorecard and we have our rocks, both reviewed on a weekly basis. But then every week we have one-on-one check-ins between the employee and their direct manager. And this is the conversation that happens about how are your rocks going? How are the KPIs going? So this first page here, it just pulls from the previous sheets. So we have review last week's KPIs. We have the rocks on here as well. But if you go to the next slide, these are the questions that we go through on a weekly basis that really pulls out the like intangible stuff that an employee might be feeling. So there's 8 questions here in the middle for company reflection, like what's going well in your role, what challenges are you facing, how is morale, is the business doing what can the business be doing to make you more successful? We tie in recognition in this next piece as well, like what are some great contributions made by team members? How are you doing just outside of work? Did you learn anything new this week? Because education is huge for us. Like we sponsor education for our employees, like we give them an annual budget. And we want to make sure that they use it. So we ask on a weekly basis, like,
that's
did
great.
you learn anything? And then the last piece, which I think is really important, is it provides the employee the opportunity to communicate feedback to their manager. They might not have stuff every week, but still a question that gets asked. And the reason we do that is it just makes them more comfortable having that conversation. So if like 3 months from now, the manager might be doing something that's really annoying the employee, it won't be like this big, awkward, like dreaded conversation because they know every week they're going to get asked this question. And it's just a bit more informal, but we're still getting the important information that we need to help an
Yeah.
employee, do their best work at advisor websites.
Cool. Something that I would love to call out, and in fact, have a follow-up question as well. How is morale? How do people normally answer this one, and what sort of like,
Yeah, it
peaks and valleys do you see on a weekly basis?
It depends on the department. To be honest, I think morale is most affected by busy times and workloads.
Mm,
But even
mm,
then, like it's not necessarily a negative answer, but it's like, how's morale? It's like, well, we're not, we don't have a ton of free time to like be extra fun at work. Like we're super busy. And like that's definitely like a feeling. So I find for the morale question, workload comes up a lot, which is a really
mm,
good way to monitor like how a team's doing. Like we don't want to burn our team out. So if like for 3 weeks in a row, employees in a specific department are like morale is not good, then we know there might be something that we need to do or at
yeah,
least like keep an eye on. But it's kind of like that feeling. It's like, how do you feel like with the 4 people in your department or 5 people in your department? Like, is everyone generally happy? Like, is there something awkward going on? Like maybe there was a disagreement amongst people on the team. Like this is stuff that would usually come up during that morale question.
great. And bottom question: provide feedback on how I can be a better leader. I have 2 responses to that. Some people might be nervous about asking that. I mean, that is a pretty brave question, truly opening up the feedback cycle.
Yeah,
What sort of responses have you seen to this question, and any
yeah.
good learning or takeaways for yourself?
Yeah, so something that we've trained our managers to do is ask follow-up questions to this. So
Yeah.
especially if they have a new report, so we ask like, is there anything I can do to be better? They might be like, oh no, everything's fine. But then the manager can be like, well, remember this, like it could be about a specific circumstance. It's like, oh, yesterday when I told you we need to do this, and like the manager can ask for direct feedback about a specific event that
Mm,
they controlled. So they'd be like, I did this. Like, how did you feel about that? And if the employee's like, oh no, that was perfect, or they're like, oh yeah, actually, I don't like working like that. We train we
that's
tra-
awesome.
we train our managers just to like try and dive in a little bit more
Yeah,
by providing like specific examples.
that's great. I love it. Um, Sidebar: what Alex is showing you is this is all done in Google Sheets, correct?
Yep.
Both the all three. We've actually adopted a lot of these different elements. So one thing I think is really cool is Alex is sharing this in a format that's actually meant to be adopted, or it could be you could copy bits and pieces out of it. You
Mhm.
could just generally use this as a learning opportunity. But obviously, these are things you could hopefully adopt into your own business as well. And over
Yeah.
at Bucket List Rewards, we've actually utilized all these questions here, and I'm a huge fan of them as
Yeah.
well. So
The last thing I want to do, I don't have a slide to speak to it, but it's just talking about how this all ties together from a like performance review standpoint. Because I think it's important to mention, like we started doing performance reviews on a quarterly basis. Years ago, we started just annually, then it was biannually, but we found doing it quarterly makes the most sense because every quarter we roll out new KPIs and employees have new rocks. So it just really ties it all together. And I think that's an important piece of driving high performance is like quicker feedback times and just like very clear objectives. Like when I do performance reviews, even for 6 months, it's recency bias. Like I don't know what it was like 5 months ago, but doing it on a quarterly basis is a lot better for us, we found.
yeah, I bet you there's far fewer surprises doing it weekly,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
wonderful. I'm looking at the clock here. It is we're approaching the half hour, and we are hoping to get most of this material done in a half hour. So I moved this on to the final question,
Perfect.
which is how do you use employee engagement surveys to uncover your organization pain points?
Yeah, so we started doing ENPS maybe 2 years ago. And it's been huge for us because, again, it allows us to receive critical feedback from our employees to make advisor websites a better place to work. We track this all through Bamboo HR. It's really good to see, obviously, the trend going up because you can see even a year ago our ENPS was 10, but we received such important critical feedback. And what we do is we're able to pull themes out of the ENPS and then as we go into the next quarter, we present the findings of the NPS to the team. We pick the one or two things that we find that we can improve as a company, and we just commit to doing it. 2019 was a good year. We were able to fulfill those commitments, so you can see a steady increase in the
Yeah,
ENPS.
yeah.
Honestly, like even after Q3, I think we're at 45. I'm like, there's no way we're going to get higher than this. But it continued to rise. And I think it's just like the momentum that's happening because it doesn't happen overnight. Like there's no way we go from a 10 to a 50. But it's just these like quarterly improvements that we've made as a company just by asking our employees, like, what can we do better?
I want to say thank you for sharing the transparency, but also congratulations because clearly you
Yeah.
guys are on a great trajectory. And forgive me if you already said this. What frequency do you run this on? Like how you said, is it a
Yeah.
quarterly basis
We do
or?
it quarterly. We do it 2 weeks before the quarter ends.
Okay,
We actually used to do it at the beginning of the quarter, but
yeah,
we'd rather do it at the end of the quarter to see if we delivered on that quarter's like promises.
hide. I love it.
Yep.
And as you creep up to these higher numbers, like I can imagine at 10, you're hearing very different feedback. Sorry, at an NPS of 10, you're hearing very different feedback than you are at a 50. What
Yep.
sort of feedback, like specific feedback, do you guys hear nowadays out of curiosity?
Um, the specific feedback, it's still improvements. I'd say mostly within the processes we use within the company. I'm trying to think of the most recent feedback, and I think a lot of it was still addressing communication between departments. There's like some bugs within our product that frustrate
Mm,
employees because they have to work with it.
yeah.
Just to give like a brief snapshot, when we were a 10 ENPS, most of that critical feedback was directly related to bugs within our product that we had to work very hard to fix.
Mm.
So as the NPS has gone up, like so has our product improvement. We found for us, like they were very strongly correlated. But people provide stuff like, do you plan to do RRSP matching and stuff like that? Like just future thinking questions of like how to make the company even better.
Awesome. Awesome. Alex, that's great. So thank you for the EMPS walkthrough. So what have we talked about today? We shared some strategies on rewards and recognition, some tools and tactics to set expectations, create alignment, and discussed employee feedback to create a great culture. I'm going to open it up to Q&A now if there are questions from the audience. I'd encourage you to take advantage of those. There's a panel where you could punch in your questions inside the screen. So please feel free to do that as well. One quick question. So Alex, you presented a bunch of different tactics today, everything from recognition to the tools you presented, if you were to start anywhere, which one would you implement first?
I would implement the connection between the individual's rocks to the department rocks to the company rocks. So when you do quarterly planning, we outline as a company, we want to accomplish this. And then every department manager is like, okay, this is how our team's going to contribute to that company goal. And then those department managers go to their team and be like, this is what our department's going to do this quarter to help our company goals, and just tie it through the entire organization, because it's the alignment that I think is most important, because we want people to feel that their work matters. And the easiest way for us to do that, the best way, is to show how it ties into the company's vision and the company's goals as well. So I'd say try to communicate that as effectively as possible. That would be the most impactful thing. The second thing would be, if you're not already doing peer recognition, whether through bucket list or anything, it's really, really useful. Like, there's only 40 of us in our company, but we probably get like 20 recognitions a day within our Slack channel for peer recognition. You might not get that much at first, but over time, the momentum is like unstoppable. Like, no matter who's in the company, like, people have come and gone. Our engagement, like as Jason has showed, has stayed the same.
I love it. Yeah, obviously I'm a huge believer in recognition. And obviously we use our own tool, but above and beyond, as I mentioned before, it's just a great way to create alignment and really bring core values alive. And then a follow-up question based upon, so you said creating alignment between the individual and the company goals, and the specific tools you guys used were the departmental rocks, GSNR, and the one other.
Scorecard.
Scorecard, thank you. Is there one you'd roll out before the other, or could you just do all three at once?
The GSR I would do first. So like that weekly one-on-one template, because if you don't have the structure in place for the full KPI tracking across the department, or if you don't already have rock set up like that probably honestly took us like 6 months to a year to roll out effectively. But you can implement weekly one-on-ones like next week.
Excellent. Wonderful. And I believe that is the last question. One thing I will propose to those, I know a bunch of existing clients are on the call, which is super exciting. Thanks very much for everybody for attending. Of note, in the future, we're going to be doing these monthly. There's going to be a huge emphasis on education and best practices. We're going to be meeting with everything from startups to early companies, to mid-sized companies, to enterprises with well over 1,000 employees. So please feel free to stay tuned. And as a follow-up as well, I'm going to be sending the slide deck and a recording of this video as well. And of course, please feel free to reach out to me if follow up with any questions. And I'm just going to launch a quick poll here. For those of you who are not a customer, I'd love to invite you to participate in a demo. So up on screen, you should, oh, pardon me. You know, I'll send that as an email follow-up to this call. If you guys are interested in learning more about the platform, just please feel free to let us know, and we can schedule a demo with you guys accordingly. But here we are, we're a few minutes over time, but Alex, I'd love to thank you for sharing super honestly today. Congrats on the amazing success.
Thank you.
Advisor websites have certainly had a rocket ship growth, and it's really cool seeing how you've brought the culture alive. And thanks everybody for attending today. And I think with that, we can probably wrap up today's webinar.
All right. Take care, everyone. Thank you.
Alex.
Bye.
Everybody.